3 days had passed since the landings into Hughes City began. 3 long days. Confederate patrols had overrun many key positions in the Union's plan of attack. However, the Union had a revised plan. They would lead all of their forces into a march straight towards the palace, and use that as a diversion whilst Colton and Jackson snuck in the palace on the other side. Jackson and Colt prepared themselves, knowing that this would be the final push. The Union's main force was in position, and began marching. From his palace, the king noticed and ordered all of his guards to the front gate. This is exactly what Colt and Jackson hoped for, and so they snuck in without much of a fuss. Now, the real battle was about to begin, and this would be to take the front gate. The army continued to march forward, getting closer and closer to the palace. Soon enough, the guard ran out of the palace and began firing at the line of soldiers, and in the windows above, empties began suppressing the zone. The march toward the palace would not be easy, but it had to be done. They continued moving, using the 17 tanks brought in and used them for cover. Over 2,000 men were marching in formation, not firing back. Eventually, the command was given to attack, and the men charged at the palace. Casualties were immense, but for each Union soldier killed, 3 more Confederates fell. Artillery began firing at the Union, but it did little to stop their advance. In just 6 minutes, soldiers had reached the front gate and began pouring into the castle, overwhelming everyone in their way. Inside the palace, Colt and Jackson searched for the throne room of King Curto. They used the map in which Jackson brought to make their way around. Eventually, they reached a dark hall. The mood became tense as sounds of screaming were heard. Colt and Jackson slowly crept through the hall when a man barraged Colt. Colton immediately fell back and fired his rifle, killing the man instantly. Colt looked at the man he killed, and a tear fell from his eyes. Slowly, more fell. "What's wrong, Colt?" asked Jackson, confused by the gesture. Colt pointed at the body as he fell to his knees. Jackson immediately understood. This was no Confederate soldier. This was the body of a Union prisoner. "What the heck?" Jackson shouted. Colt stood up. "He jumped me. I didn't know what to do." "Why the heck did he jump you?" Jackson shouted. "He probably thought I wasn't Confederate." "What have I done?" Colton shouted in grief. Jackson looked at Colt. "It's not your fault. Now let's get a move on." They began moving. Colt had still not forgiven himself. Moving through the palace swiftly, the Union had managed to take control of the main gate, and they were now moving towards the royal dining room, sweeping rooms, eliminating all soldiers. The enemy fought with an iron fist, but the Union fought firm. By the time they had reached the dining room, a large portion of the Confederate defense were dead. The enemies showed no mercy, so the soldiers of the Union believed they shouldn't either, forcibly taking floor by floor, room by room. The soldiers carved a path straight towards the throne room. The end was near, and the soldiers gained a new sense of hope as their enemy ran. In just 15 minutes, the Union had nearly taken the entire palace. Towards the rear, Colton and Jackson had finally made it to the throne room, where they found King Curto. He was sitting on his throne. As soon as he noticed them, shock overcame him, and he began running. Jackson lifted his rifle and killed Curto. A few moments later, Union soldiers rushed in. The palace was secure, and the day had finally been won. For a few more days, skirmishes continued all over the planet, but they were quickly suppressed. Colton and Jackson, along with their army, returned to the Union fleet above, where they received their new orders. The Battle of Klipson was one of the most bloody battles in the galactic history. Thousands died in the fighting, but many more were scarred from the atrocities of war. Humans have a tendency to disagree with each other, but we often kill each other for these disagreements. Whether it be political or personal, there will always be war. As the Union fleet moved out, using light speed travel method known as slip speed to make it back to Union City, Colton thought about the prisoner he had murdered. Was it his fault for killing the men, or was it a mistake? Either way, he couldn't deny it. He ended the man's life.